Hey everyone, how you doing? I am Eklund, and welcome to the show today. We're going to be discussing hockey and hockey-related issues this afternoon. No, I'm dressed like this because I am just my daughter's 8th grade graduation today. My son's 5th grade is my son's 5th grade is tomorrow, and but let's and I have one question for all of you. Do you ever get a shirt that requires cufflinks and you don't know what the hell to do with it?
No. Why would I buy a shirt that needs cufflinks?
I didn't think you don't know. Like you buy a shirt that's like
yes, you do. Yes,
you know the shirts are all like they're all clipped together in packaging.
I used to work at a place called Just Shirts. They used to be around in the 80s, and they were in like Roosevelt Field and various places. And
I bet they sold pants.
And no, actually, there was a
Just Shirts
for that. But the point was, you knew when you were buying the shirt whether it was cufflink or it already had the buttons. You just all you have to do is flip it over if you don't want to.
Okay, I guess that's true. But you know, I mean, really, in this day and age, I don't think the button thing should be. I think every shirt should be buttoned and then have but also have a hole you can cufflink if you want to. But to not put a button on it seems kind of ridiculous.
Well, for false advertising is always a big thing with me. And there's a place in Buffalo called Just Pizza, and they sell stuff other than pizza. So
I know. That's one of my favorite things to do. We would do back with my church years ago when we had these scavenger hunts. One of the scavenger hunts was always to find a place called Just Something, go there and ask for something else. So I remember we had a lot of fun with that. I know you can't if you're not going to do that. Just pizza. So anyway, I'm just saying I don't own cufflinks, so this shirt was a mess today for me. But I guess I gotta purchase a pair of cufflinks now.
Yeah, go to like an estate sale. You'll find some dead guy's cufflinks. That's the best way.
That'd be unnerving.
I was just about to say, Russ. I inherited my dad's cufflinks, so if every time I have a shirt, I use his.
Wow.
But
I nice buying shirts that need cufflinks, by the way.
Yeah, there you go. I have to make one. I have to make one point about the broadcast last night that infuriated me slightly. I mean, I understand the reason why, but we got to see, we're just watching NBC, we got to see Sidney Crosby, Trevor Daley, Pascal Dupuis, and maybe one other player carry around the cup, and then we had the dulcet tones of Mike Emmerich say, and if you want to watch the celebration, let's go to NBCSN while we cut away for the local news. It's the Stanley Cup. It's the end of the Stanley Cup. Can you carry
doesn't
it
matter.
for 4 minutes?
It doesn't matter.
Dan's a producer. I'm gonna go to Dan on this one. Dan.
Okay. Well, here's the reason. Here's the reason they're going to tell you.
Yeah.
With everything that happened in Orlando yesterday,
Right.
we're getting to the news as quick as possible.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of people. There's a lot of people out there.
It doesn't matter. NBC wants to get their local news on. They want to.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised. I wouldn't have been surprised if that was preempted in Florida. If certain areas of Orlando didn't even see the game.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's true or not, but that's something that that's what they're going to tell you. That's what they're going to tell you. The reality is, you said last night you wouldn't cut off from the Super Bowl. You wouldn't cut off from the Super Bowl because it's 65 million viewers, and they're paying. They pay for a post-game show. They probably got $50 million for a post-game show. There's no sponsored post-game show from the NHL.
You probably 11:15. We're doing. You know what?
11 o'clock, 11:15 for someone.
60 Minutes runs into the news sometimes because of football games running late.
Not with this kind of news going on, though. I mean, this is a big
come on.
deal.
No, that's such a cop-out. And here's the other thing.
It is a cop-out, but I'm telling you, it's because of ratings and because of money.
But we live in a society where it's no big deal to switch over to MS.
It is. There's a reason. A lot of people don't get NBCSN.
There are 80 million homes. That's not an excuse anymore.
It is an excuse. I've already run into it twice in the last month. It's still a legitimate excuse.
I can't even remember the number that NBCSN is on my cable channel.
Yes, it's 212. You guys know it.
You know where it is.
New York area don't know it, don't have it, and a lot of hotels don't have it. And so all of a sudden, if I'm watching and it gets shut off, I am now scrambling to get the app, and now I'm missing guys. It's bad coverage. I'm sorry. It is.
That's true.
It is. I'm not saying it's good coverage, but it's not going to change. When they start pulling in 5, 6, 7.0s, then you might see a change.
I mean, you don't know the news. Like the 11 o'clock news is really big business, right? I mean, that's a big business thing. That's.
If the game ended at 10:40, you would have got 20 minutes. It's just the time the way it ended.
All I can say is I know someone who works in local television news in Buffalo. And they were prepared for the game, for their local news to go on at the end of the NBC broadcast or at the end of the broadcast, but it would depend on how long the game was. I mean, if the game was 11:30, we were going to go on at 11:30, and it was fortuitous that the game ended, I think, at like 10:50 or 10:40, and then they got enough of the Conn Smythe and the cup put out there. But I mean, and to my mind,
one thing they could have done better is, while NBC was still on, start the coverage on NBC Sports at the same time,
simulcast
for about 5 minutes. Yes. Okay, then when you tell them to switch over, when you switch over, it's already there. You're not missing anything. That's one thing they could have done better.
They could have done that for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But
that does make sense.
I just think
because when I made the switch, I missed a couple guys. Sorry.
Right.
Put that on top of Game 3, which was probably, except for Game 5, the best game in the series, being on NBCSN on a Saturday night, instead of.
Well, that there's no question. I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand why we're not. It's not during NBC's regular.
Belmont. Wasn't the Belmont on Saturday?
It wasn't
not that late.
It was on at 6 o'clock though. So
no. I don't know. It wasn't. We're talking about last Saturday, not this previous.
Okay, gotcha.
It was in between the Preakness and the Belmont. It was Saturday night. The Sunday night, the basketball game was on ABC. The Game 3 was on NBCSN. It was the only game that was on NBCSN of all the 6 games, and it was probably the best game. And the thing is, I mean, to me, that's just. I mean, every game should be on NBC. You're not running into their primetime scheduling. All their shows end in May.
That's not true.
Yeah, no.
American Ninja Warrior should. They will never.
My friggin' God.
Mike, American Ninja Warrior pulls to 7 to 10 million viewers. It's all about money. It's all about numbers. We can yell and scream all we want, but when the NHL pulls ratings, they'll preempt shows. It's that simple. I see the bills. I know what makes money, and I know what doesn't. It sucks, but it is what it is.
American Ninja Warriors, my God. I mean,
Yeah, I know it's unfortunate, but when it's pulling 6 times the viewers that an NHL Finals game is, it's an easy decision for the network.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. I mean, that is the bottom line with them. But I agree. Let's get on with the show and talk about hockey. All right, so it is Monday, June 13th. Ready, y'all?
Yep.
Hello, Hockey World. Oh, a bell. Maybe a bell will be good here. Jeez.
We'd have another one that we had to put on a GIF or a Vine.
There you go. I know. Hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, June 13th, 2016. Go.
I'm Michael Angello.
I'm Dan Petru.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Eklund, and I know the year. And you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the hockey world so you don't have to pay attention. But if you weren't paying attention last night, there's something wrong with you because every hockey fan needs to be in one place. We all need to watch the Stanley Cup raised. That's a tradition from when I was a kid. No matter where you are, you got to go to a place you can see the Stanley Cup raised. I've been lucky to see it live a bunch of times. Last night I didn't. Unfortunately, I was home because family comes first. Big graduation day for my daughter, not my sister.
Your sister daughter.
My daughter, but
I'm making that joke.
So I know. So I had a good old time watching the game at home with my family, which was kind of fun. But let's talk about this game. This game was I thought one of the best games of the series. It's hard to tell. I've been when you watch all of them live, you get a different feel for it over and over. But watching this on TV, I felt like I felt like the Sharks played a strong game in this one, and I know they didn't get a lot of shots. There was so much being made of the fact that they weren't getting shots in the third period. For sure, they needed more shots. But through the first couple of periods, they had a lot of chances if they didn't have shots in the first few periods. And I thought they played pretty well. But this was, I mean, let's just face it. I mean, the better team won the Stanley Cup. This is the best team in hockey right now. They were the best team in hockey. I wrote a blog towards the end of the season. Can anyone stop the Pittsburgh Penguins? Was the title of the blog, and the answer now we know is no, because they couldn't be stopped. I mean, they were that good. They were that solid. I think they would have beaten anybody they could have played in a 7-game series. I really don't think either. I think they would have beaten the Hawks. I think they would have beaten the Kings. So yeah, and they took down the best team in hockey in the Capitals. So I mean, at the end of the day, you got to give it up. This was a good team, and it was exciting. I'm kind of upset having been in Pittsburgh, for that Game 5. I really kind of wanted to go back to the Pittsburgh fans. We get a chance to see a Stanley Cup won in their building. But at the end of the day, I think they'd rather have a win and then have to sweat out the game on Wednesday because that would have been crazy. But what are your thoughts, Russ, on the series?
Well, first thing is I wanted it to go back to Pittsburgh so we could see you with the Google glasses on the ice.
That was there.
That's a big disappointment.
I had him for Game 5. I was ready to go.
I know that's a big disappointment. But I'll tell you, Game 5 was still better, and I'll tell you why it was better. Because when it was 2-1, I never thought the Sharks were ever going to tie it up or Pittsburgh was ever going to lose the lead. Before then, when the Sharks made the quick strike, I was like, okay, there is a good pulse here. They were really building towards that moment. They actually, I put in our little group, there was a little bit of a Sharknado going on when they were controlling the puck for 2, 3, 4 minutes at a time there. But then after that, sloppy play got back in, and that was the part that really upset me was I saw a little bit, and that may have been just due to fatigue. I think Pittsburgh had fatigued them to the point where it was sloppy play. The only narrative in this game, though, that still upsets me is the one that, well, you know, Matt Murray, he's okay. He makes the save when he has to. It's like, do people not understand that sometimes when the two saves that you have to make are the ones that win the game, it doesn't matter how many shots a guy faces. It doesn't matter.
It's a great point. And not just that, but, you know, the idea of what obviously the calmness that Matt Murray gives the entire team, that his you know, the way he reacts to situations, he's not nervous, he doesn't get up or he doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low, and that all, you know, is what the Penguins have never had, you know, with Marc-Andre Fleury. As great a goalie as Marc-Andre Fleury is, so I still think that Matt Murray was the most important person to the Penguins as far as winning the Stanley Cup. Now I know statistically okay, but I think we got to go to Mike next and talk about the MVP for Phil Kessel. I mean, this idea here is, I mean, I know Sidney Crosby gets the MVP. I think that Kessel had a better playoff than Sidney Crosby. I think Sidney Crosby was very good, and he played very well. And it's not always about statistics. That's true. And even his statistics weren't terrible. I mean, he was right there with Phil. It wasn't like they were far off.
Right.
But
I mean, I could tell, and I said this on the webcast late last week, I could tell from the narrative that was being floated by a lot of the media who would be voting for the Conn Smythe that Kessel was not going to get it, even though he led the team with 22 points.
Yeah.
You know, it was all the intangibles that Crosby, you know, the face-offs, matching up against Joe Thornton, matching up against the other team's #1 center, penalty killing, blocking shots, yada yada yada. So I get that, but I, you know, honestly, and I've been one of the biggest critics of Phil Kessel, but I mean, you can't say anything other than his play in the playoffs was invaluable. I mean, he had 10 goals. He scored winning goals. He, you know, he actually bought in and played two-way in the Stanley Cup. I just overall looking at this, looking at the way these teams. I mean, I don't think San Jose played a dominating game in any of the 6 games. The best was probably Game 5, which they won, but you know, they had a 2-goal lead in the first period and blew it within a couple minutes. I mean, last night, you know, if they had any sense of confidence, I mean, they worked really hard after the opening goal, after Dumoulin scored, to get back in the game. They really and they were applying themselves, and they get Couture's tying goal, and I think it was a minute and 12 seconds later, like it was nothing, Letang comes back and scores, and you could just feel, I mean, I could just feel the air being sucked out of that building. And not to say that it's over with 1 goal, but Pittsburgh has been leading by 1 goal most of the series. They're very comfortable. They're very good defensively, and San Jose never was able to get any kind of impetus back in that game. So, I mean, every score in this series was close, but this was not a close series at all.
Dan?
Well, I think the Sharks, through 40 minutes yesterday, were playing their best hockey of the series. Even after the Pittsburgh goal, they had chances. They just kept missing the net. They kept getting shots blocked. You credit the Pittsburgh I have to give credit to the Pittsburgh forwards collectively. How many times did you see them back check and break up plays and get into shooting lanes? And they just did a fantastic job over the course of the series. I felt like the Sharks were trying to be too fine on Murray. It's almost like, you know what, make this kid make some saves. Get some more shots on net. Stop trying to go. We all know there's some weakness short side high. We all know that. But you can't keep missing the net. At some point, just get the puck on net and see what happens. And I thought the Sharks fell victim of trying to be too fine. As for the MVP, I felt like the NHL went all NBA yesterday and gave it to the best player on the team that won. It's supposed to be an award for the duration of the playoffs.
Correct.
And I don't know if you've ever had a guy win Conn Smythe who didn't score a goal in the finals. I mean, I don't think that's ever happened before outside of a goalie winning, obviously.
Yeah.
With that, personally, I would have gave it to Kessel, or you really could have made a case for Letang as well. Over the duration of the playoffs, those two were outstanding. And one last thing, I think you have to give credit to Marc-Andre Fleury, because when this team was in the crapper early in the year, when this team couldn't score and they were flat, he was keeping them in every game. He was keeping them in every game. He was stealing points that allowed them to make that run. And I think you have to tip you. If Marc-Andre Fleury never plays another game for the Penguins, I think Penguin fans should be as proud as his name on the cup as much as Matt Murray's.
Sure.
I'm with you on that. I thought, I also said you could make a case for Martin Jones as the MVP because he was just so crazy good. And if they win that game last night, and if it goes back to 7, and Pittsburgh had 1-7, and another after another incredible Jones,
then you'd have an argument for Jones.
It would be an argument. I mean, that's why I said at some points last night I was thinking this could be Jones because he was coming on that strong. I mean, he won Game 5 by himself. He almost won Game 6 by himself.
Well, Couture had 30 points in the playoffs. I mean, and he scored the only goal yesterday. He win that game, go to Game 7, and win.
He might probably the guy.
Yeah, he would have gotten it probably. I mean, and Couture, the one thing I'll say about him is he didn't show up the first 4 games of this series. I thought, he was really good before that, but in the first 4 games, and like I said, he was the most down of any player I saw in the locker room after Game 4, and he definitely showed up for 5 and 6. I mean, he was skating and just going to net. And crazy, and it felt like as the series went along, the Sharks were learning how to play the Penguins. It was definitely one of those things you could see it every game. They got more and more comfortable. They couldn't necessarily keep up with them, but they were learning what to do. And there were moments when they were keeping up with them.
Yeah, and that's the key word, moments.
Yeah, not enough.
It was
for
not
sure.
long stretches. I mean, you can get away with like winning games. Even if the other team is playing well, if you dominate for longer stretches, it was intermittent. It was 5 minutes here, then they completely disappear. I mean, honestly, I told Russ when we were talking this morning that I started to nod off at about 13 minutes left to go in the third period with the game 2-1 because nothing was happening. I didn't fall asleep, thankfully. I got to stay up.
Yeah.
But it was just, I mean, there was not a lot going on. Pittsburgh was suffocating, and San Jose could not generate any kind of good offensive chances.
It was a really fast-moving game.
There is a point now with me at my age that my brain will shut off if it doesn't believe something is happening and something will change.
Yeah.
And so that almost happened to me, too. It did.
Yeah, that's true. That's interesting. I mean, it was.
I was wide awake. I'm used to being up till 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
Normally I am.
That was good. I could have went 4 overtimes. I would have been fine.
Listen, I had softball practice. I did 2 hours outside gardening. I was done. I'm still sore, man.
Yeah, it was the Allentown Art Festival in Buffalo, and I had an order of deep fried Oreos.
I had deep fried Oreos yesterday as well. They were fantastic.
So did you hear Stephen Oleski's thing? I thought this was pretty cool. This is just some of the side stories. He's quoted, "Was at 30 years old, I had my first sip of alcohol from the only cup I'll ever drink out of. Honored to be a part of it."
Wow.
I knew Steve a little bit when he played in Bridgeport. He played for the Sound Tigers for a year. Fantastic human being. One of the nicest athletes I've ever encountered over my course of sports in general. So I'm very happy for him. Also very happy for Connecticut's own Nick Bonino. It'll be great that the Cubs coming to Connecticut this summer.
That's really cool.
I have to update everybody. I have a lower third.
Look at that.
Look at you.
Oh, look at that.
Welcome back to the nation.
There you go. I mean, it was funny. Yesterday, I was watching Sportsnet during the day, and they did some really cool things. They were doing some great things on Gordie Howe. I mean, and it's something that you guys wouldn't have seen in the States. But it was watching this thing. It was crazy to watch. They had this. They were rotating this Gordie Howe special, which was a really cool just documentary on his life, basically, and along with the All-Star game that he played in, for the Red Wing in Detroit, as a Whaler. Which had, an unbelievable amount of Flyers players in it. For that time, if you remember, there were like 7.
You said something. You said something you wouldn't have seen in the States. Gordie Howe probably spent more time in the States than he did.
Oh, I know.
And he played for a team in the States longer than any team he ever played for. And so why didn't we see more in the States? We saw tons of Muhammad Ali. We should have seen Gordie Howe. We should have.
You really should have. He really.
And ironically, it's a tough thing to do, but they honored or they recognized the situation in Orlando at the beginning of the game, and then recognized Gordie Howe during the first intermission. So
Right.
it got pushed because of the tragedy in
No,
Orlando.
that's fair. I don't
Yeah, it is.
fault him for that. But
I'm
again,
not gonna get on like national coverage. I'm not gonna get on ESPN for not doing more on Gordie Howe because you wouldn't expect them to.
No, I would. Whoa.
No.
They did 9 hours on Muhammad Ali. They could do an hour on Gordie.
Russ, they don't care about hockey. Okay, they only care about
They do
football.
care about
And they're like,
hockey.
no, they don't. Don't. Stop.
And why did they buy the World Cup of Hockey? Why buy it?
Because it was cheap. And it's summer
But they
programming.
have it. The point
No, the World Cup, I'll tell you what.
The thing is, when that comes on, they're going to pretend to care for a month, and it's going to come across completely insincere, and all of us will see right through it. Okay, there are plenty of good hockey people there at that network. Unfortunately, they're not in charge. That's what it boils down to. The people in charge, they only care about what rates. So I would get on the NHL network more and NBC Sports for not doing more. If you want to get, those are people that have the games all the time. They needed to do more.
And be sure about this: the World Cup of Hockey is on ESPN because the NHL wants to have something on ESPN. But and they, I mean, the NBC would have bought this just as easily. But the idea here was, okay, we're going to try something on ESPN, and this was their experiment to try on ESPN. I think that's the only reason it's there.
But based on the way they've been doing things, they'd probably put it on CNBC after Jim Cramer's show.
And if their coverage is anywhere as bad as the commercials that they've done for it, holy hell! I mean, the commercials for the World Cup of Hockey have just been.
Yeah, those are league commercials, though.
Yeah, they're horrifying, though.
It's supposed to be a spoof on Slapshot. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
One or two of them work. The rest of them.
Yeah. No, I don't know, but yeah, but I mean, the Gordie Howe stuff was amazing, and watching that All-Star game was really fun because I got my kids together with me, and I'm like, listen, I watched this. I was 12 years old in 1980 when this game came on. I remember this is the Flyers team that had only lost one game at the All-Star break.
That's the 33 game win.
35. Yep. 35. And and Pete Peters comes into net after Esposito gets hurt in the beginning of the All-Star game, making a great save on Gordie Howe. Tony Esposito gets hurt. And you remember Gordie Howe had 10 goals early in that season. It was this crazy thing. He got like 10 goals when he was back in the NHL. He's old. This old guy had 10 goals right off the bat. So Gordie Howe fires this incredible shot. Tony Esposito makes a save, and Pete Peters comes in, and Pete Peters at the time was 25-0-10. Like, he hadn't lost a game. It's just crazy.
His goals against was probably .89, and his goals against his save percentage was probably .89, and his save percentage was probably 3.5.
It was in the ones, yeah, but which is still. But for the 1980s, that's like .25.
Right.
I mean, exactly. That would be like .025 these days for the 1980s. I mean, and that's Gretzky's first game as a 19-year-old in the All-Star game, and Howe's last as a 51-year-old. Wild things about that game that I just want to talk about. It was funny. It was just like the fact that that Gretzky was in the Flyers. It was in the Flyers conference. Like that was the way they had that split up back then. The Oilers were in the same conference, which I guess was this Prince of Wales conference, right?
Yeah, the Flyers and the Islanders, all the expansion teams are there, right?
The funny thing I saw there, and of course from a Leaf point of view, the Leafs representative in that game was Dave Burrows.
Yeah, because
nice.
And he started. He was a starter in the game.
Yeah, Dave Burrows is the member of one of the most infamous trades in the history of the Maple Leafs. They traded Randy Carlyle, who won the Norris the next year, for Dave Burrows, and Dave Burrows was out of hockey in 1982. So it was just bizarre that I forgot that he was the All-Star representative for Toronto.
And the starting line was like sacrilege. The starting line for that team was Bill Barber and Reggie Leach, centered by
Brian Trottier.
Yep.
Like, holy cow, what the hell's that about? It was really funny just to see that, that line. I guess Clark didn't make that team, which is pretty. He must have either been hurt or something, but he didn't make that team. Leach made that team. Barber made the team. McLeish made the team. Prop was on the team. Jimmy Watson was on that team. Norm Barnes was on that team.
Norm Barnes?
Norm Barnes was on that team. And there's another defenseman from that Flyers team that was on that team. I can't think of who it was, but
Ben Wilson?
No, shoot. They had, and then Pete Peters. There were 7 representatives from the Flyers. I mean, the team had only lost one game, so obviously they were all playing incredibly well, right? But yeah, that's what also is kind of interesting about that same Howe game from a Flyers fan perspective.
Oh, the fact that the Flyers won the cup that year. Never mind. Sorry.
Right. You beat me to it. I was.
And the other great thing in that game, who skates on the ice? Who is the replacement for? There was a player on the Kings that was hurt. Who's the replacement for that? Butch Goring skates on the ice as a King. And remember, just like a couple months later, he's a member of the Oilers. I mean, of the Islanders,
Islanders.
in what is known as the the trade deadline trade of all time, right? So that was really, there's a whole lot of crazy like side foreshadowing going on in that game, and it was fun to watch just to see, and my kids are watching and saying these guys are terrible. I'm like, what?
Right.
Yeah, they're watching the game.
They had to have remarked how slow they were.
Oh yeah, they're like, what's wrong with the goalies? He should have stopped that. And then one guy comes in the break.
I said that like 7 times this weekend watching old footage.
Okay, factor this in. The players in 1980 were probably going at 3/4 speed of the players now when they're at top speed in regular season games. Now take into consideration they're playing at half speed because it's an all-star game.
But they're
practically not
that's
moving.
when all-star games still mattered. They weren't really at half speed.
No, they didn't matter.
They weren't at full speed, but they weren't at half. X, right? They're probably at 3/4 for that.
There was a lot more pride in the All-Star game in that. I mean, it was a low-scoring All-Star game. It was like a competitive All-Star game. They were playing defense. There was stuff going on in that game. It was not nearly what we've seen. I mean, now we have the new All-Star format altogether.
Hal did throw an elbow or two in that game, didn't he?
Oh yeah, he did. He threw elbows, and he made a beautiful pass on the first goal I think that was scored in the game. And it's funny to see Tony Esposito, who was the weirdest. He was like basically like a Frankenstein type character at this point, because he had taken his old equipment from like the original Six era and had with his old mask, and had now put there was cage on top of the old mask.
Yeah, the cage. That, if you remember, that he did that after what happened with Bernie Perrant.
What happened with Bernie Perrant, right? So
he was so used to that mask. I remember him talking about this. He was so used to that mask, and he was so comfortable with it, but he recognized that the holes were too big for an actual stick to get through them. So he put the mesh over the eye holes,
which looks crazy. And his waffling gloves are from the old era too, but they've got extra extensions on them and stuff like that. There's weird things happening. He was completely just get used to something new, Tony. It's like, this is not that crazy that you have to be exactly that. It was a fun thing to watch, but and I taped it and my kids definitely. There was a guy who came in on a breakaway and fell down. I forget who it was, but he made a deke on the goalie, made a quick deke, and just fell down because he was making a quick play.
Was that Scott Hartnell's father? No.
Yeah, and then my daughter's like, why would they fall down? These guys are terrible. I'm like, these are the All-Stars. They were. You got to remember
the footage of Gordie Howe's last goal. It was like a backhander from the
blue line,
with no screen. And I'm like, how does that go in?
I'm pretty sure that the goalie was Doug Sotart.
Listen, don't start ripping Doug Sotart, or I'll.
It was either Doug Sotart or Richard Sevigny. It was one of those two Montreal, because I think Sotart played with Montreal. Look, can I just go back one final thing on the Cup, because Jim Rutherford said something this morning that obviously he thinks this team will be good next year and will contend next year, and we know how it is when it comes to teams trying to redo.
Everybody says that. It's hard.
Everybody says that. But if you look, and I'm not trying to be down on San Jose, but I'm looking at San Jose realistically. You've got an older Thornton and Marleau, who I think now are, they're 1 year away from being UFA, probably in my mind 1 year away from retirement. I think they're gonna go downhill precipitously. I think this team in 2 years will miss the playoffs. I really do. I think that they're gonna fall apart.
I mean, but you could say that. But they also have a young Donskoy. The loss of Hurdle can't be underestimated. That was a big loss. You got a guy. I really like what I saw from Melker Carlson. They have some young forwards coming in too, and Joe Thornton can still play. I mean, I'll give you Marleau. Marleau looks.
But Marleau wasn't a real big factor this year, honestly.
No, he wasn't. Yeah, it's almost like he's becoming a bottom six forward almost.
Yeah, he's a solid bottom six.
No, but they're sort of in the spot the Rangers were a year ago, where they maximized what they could. Right. They didn't win it, and now it's going to start to trend downward for them. And they might make the playoffs.
I think their core is still young enough. And
Russ, it's a bad mix. The defense isn't good enough.
And yes, they do have to upgrade the defense. I agree.
And Russ can attest to the fact that Timo Meier, the first-round pick from last year, is an excellent prospect and will probably come in either next year or the year after that. But in terms of, we've already seen the transition from Thornton and Marleau to Couture and Pavelski. I mean, Pavelski is not exactly a spring chicken either.
No, he's not.
So, I mean, yeah, I think they're going to now be on a bit of a downward slope. And for a team like Toronto, who has 3 of their draft picks in the next the 2 drafts after this one, they're in a good position with those picks.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I would. I mean, and I honestly think though that the experience you get from this kind of a run in the playoffs is going to help those young kids become better players. And also, Martin Jones is still young. I mean, Martin Jones. If Martin Jones continues, I mean, he might just be lightning in a bottle right now. But if not, if he gets the experience out of this and becomes one of the top goalies, they're going to be in the playoff contention. If he's
they got to work on that defense, or they won't be.
Oh yeah, they do, but they will.
Martin. They probably need two defensemen.
They just signed him. That's the thing. They just signed him.
They need to replace Paul Martin.
But Burns, honestly, I thought Burns had a pretty rough game yesterday. Of all the players, like he would have
wound down. I mean, he was playing at the highest intensity of maybe anybody on both teams for that many games. Probably just wore down.
Right, and some of his shots were just crazy off the target last night. And that was tough.
Here you go, Dan. Paul Martin, 3 more years at $4.85 million. 2 more years.
Does he have no trade clause?
I don't know.
He's a top pairing guy. He just isn't a top pairing guy.
Right. Justin Braun, $3.8 million for another 4 years. Brendan,
that's a good contract.
Yeah, that's a good contract.
For another 4 years, and Marc-Edouard Vlasic, $4.2 for another 2 years. Brent Burns is a UFA after next year.
Yeah, let's admit that Vlasic is a steal at that price.
Vlasic is a steal.
Braun is pretty much a steal at under 4. I mean, that's like right now, a top 4 defenseman is over $4 million in the NHL.
Right.
Like, so if you're getting anybody who's top 4 defenseman under 4, I'd say a top 4 defenseman's like 4.5 actually in the NHL right now. So that's pretty solid.
They need 2 defensemen, and they need a little more youth. Like a guy like Zubris, they're going to have to part ways with.
Yeah, rough team.
They're going to need a little more youth. I mean, they're in that rough spot. They are in the West, and they might look like the Rangers look this year or next year. They could.
And I don't say this with any particular glee, but if anybody was hurt more by his performance in the final than Roman Polak, I don't know who is, because
he was terrible
going into next month, and he was exposed for being slow. I would be shocked if he gets anything more than a 2-year deal out there.
Yeah, hands of stone and slow.
I was talking to people down at ice level, who were watching the series a lot, and they were just saying, that Polak it reached the point where they just didn't trust him and they couldn't put him out there. He just really got to the point where it was very rough. And then
Dylan was getting inordinate amounts of ice time, it seemed.
Yeah.
And now the one thing I'll say, and this kind of ties all together, and then we'll move on to some rumors, is is in the Gordie Howe thing, he had this great quote about losing, and I love this. I thought it was really, after all the stuff we've discussed, about choking and all the different things, this kind of just summed it up the best. He was like, he said, listen, because it was an interview after a game where he had been thrown out of the game because of a fight, and they were trying to get him to say the ref had done something bad, right? And try to blame the refs basically. And he said, look, I'm not going to make excuses. I'm not going to sit there and say anything. I'm not going to blame this on anybody else. He said, sometimes you do your best, the other team wins, you just tip your hat and go away.
Yep.
I thought that was pretty darn good. I mean, it's like
I saw a tweet that should be recognized. Nobody was tougher on the Penguins than Rob Rossi. Like, even when we were down on the Penguins, when they made the moves, we looked at it and said, all right, maybe there's something happening here. And then eventually we all started to change. He never did. He was down on them the whole year. He finally said, yeah, I was wrong.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and that's a great point. That was really good for Rossi to say that. I like Rossi a lot. I thought he did a good job. I mean, he's a tough one, but at the same time, he's honest, which is good.
Yep.
And he's not afraid to report. I mean, when you're the head beat writer for a team like that, it takes guts to do what he does.
It does.
Because he could really easily be shut out. There's nothing. They don't have to bring him in. Let's get to rumors, and right away, let's start with the Penguins. All right. I do not want to.
You're not even going to wait for the parade.
I'm not even going to wait for the parade, Russ. How terrible is that?
That's bad.
I know. I thought about it. Unfortunately, the draft is 11 days away. And it's like, and I had this Malkin story, as you guys know, early in the playoffs or early in the finals, and then then somebody else I think came up. Kyprios maybe came with it. Put it out there on Sportsnet after I had talked to you guys about it. But I don't write about these things while they're going on. I really don't think that I should. But now that it's not going on, I think I have to. It's my job. So the idea here is, that Malkin wants out, and they want him out. But this is what was going around, big time around during the finals, that he, wants to be the guy. And there was a lot of interesting things going on around that in the playoffs. And, the funniest being that Malkin would go onto the ice, follow Crosby onto the ice after Crosby. And there was a whole Crosby Malkin thing that you could tell there was definitely some tension there. I mean, they play well together and they work hard together. And Malkin wanted to win the Stanley Cup. You could tell. I mean, he was very into.
Played for real.
He played for real, and he played. Like he made you wonder, like what Malkin's all about now, or how good he could be. And I think he wanted people to see how good he could be. And he played like he was the first line center on that team, but he most of the time he knows he's not, and I think that's just playing its way out. Plus, the Penguins need money, and they want to get their cap space figured out. So it's a business decision for them, and they feel like I think this is the time. So I think that is going to be the story of the draft. And the question here remains, though, and what I've also been told is that Malkin has a list of teams that he'll go to, and the problem with that list is that those teams are teams that are just capped out. So it's going to have to be very creative to make this happen. But teams, you'll be surprised. Another person said to me, you'll be surprised how creative people can get when Malkin's on board there. So there are some things that you'll see here. I mean, this is a serious player, and I talked to one owner about this last week, kind of off the record, and he said, yeah, I mean, I told him what I had heard, the rumor, the possible deal for Malkin would entail, the kind of things it would require, and he said that's a lot to give up, but it's Malkin. And that was his response to it. So people do think of Malkin as one of the top 10 players, top 5 forwards in the league.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to get a lot more for him. But I do think that this will be the draft story. This will be, obviously Stamkos will be a story, and whether his rights get traded soon. But Malkin's the one. And this, the final question I'll pass onto the panel here is this: will the Penguins move him to the Eastern Conference? That's a big thing I heard. Now we've seen a lot of players lately that the teams don't care about moving players within even their own division, but Malkin's a different bird. I mean, you're not talking about moving just a third or second liner to the division. You're talking about moving the best. You're moving what is going to become the best player on that team.
I think it's whoever gives them the best return. That has to be. And you can say that this was it ended up backfiring on them, but Boston traded Phil Kessel within their division. They traded.
Right, yeah.
Toronto. They got the best return from Toronto. They got 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick. Whoever you get the best return from, that's all that Jim Rutherford has to be concerned with, is who gives them the best return. If it's LA, if it's Minnesota, if it's whoever, great. If it's in your conference, if it's in your division, you go with it. I mean, the thing is that I think if you're going to move Malkin, you move him now. What is he, 29 years old, 30 years old?
Yeah.
He's 30 this summer, I think.
30 this summer, okay. And the thing is that yeah, and what we're talking about is he's in his prime right now. He has probably 2-3 years in his prime, and then not to say he's going to drop off a cliff, but he'll start to go downhill, and he's making over $9 million. I think it's 9.5. Yeah, 9.5. 9.5 for another 6 years. So that and the thing is, and one of the motivations that Rutherford had in going out and getting Phil Kessel last July was the fact that you had this core group with the Penguins in Letang and Fleury and Malkin and Crosby, and to a lesser extent guys like Hornquist, who are in the same age range, and they needed that one player to make that team win. Now they've won, but now you may see Fleury and you may see Malkin move, and that's basically because this team is going to grow old pretty quickly.
Yeah, it feels like when you knew that Gretzky and Messier couldn't stay together forever. Yeah. It feels like that. It's a lesser version, but it's similar. Yep. It also feels like when we were at the Pirates game and we saw on the big board that Jordan Stahl was not going to be re-signing and he gets booed, and then the next day he's traded at the draft. It does feel like that too. So I think all those things can happen, but it's not going to be an easy trade. So it may not happen on draft day just because there may not be enough time.
It might not happen at all. I mean, the reality is they might not. I mean, they're not going to give him away, and they're not going to. And they're not going to take back. They're going to try not to take back money. They're going to have to take back some money.
They got to take at least. Do you think they'd have to take at least $5 million back, right?
Yeah, and or more if you're talking about like a guy in his final year of his contract type thing.
Right.
Or final 2 years. Like a name I heard mentioned was Vanek. And we're talking about Minnesota. So in Minnesota now, Vanek has this year and one more year on his contract. So now Vanek obviously wanted to play in Minnesota, right? That was the whole story about Vanek going to Minnesota. His wife's from Minnesota. Well, the hope there, with the thought with some of them was, well, maybe he doesn't want to play in Minnesota, but at the same time, maybe he, wants to play with Sidney Crosby. Like that's the other. There's that too, right? So I mean, Vanek wouldn't be the key component in a deal like that. It would also be something like Roman Polak, perhaps Saku Koivu, not Roman Polak. I'm sorry.
Jonas. Brodin and Mikko Koivu?
Brodin, Mikko Koivu. Thanks.
Good translation.
You're welcome. That was good translation.
Thank you for translating Eklundese. Mikko Koivu, Brodin, and their first-round draft pick, which I was told the Penguins would want to get Bellows. He's the guy they would like to get. So that would be, those three players, and perhaps Vanek for Crosby and something. That would
Malkin.
For Malkin, Lord.
Yep.
Wow.
Oh man, you can tell I haven't slept much.
Pittsburgh is panicking here.
I'm sorry, but just discuss.
I got you.
Grab my.
I feel you.
I'll get my pride back while you talk about that possible trade. If you understand what it is.
I mean, the one thing, if Vanek has a no move, he went there for a reason, so he could scuttle that completely.
It wasn't a great year for him though, and he didn't have the best.
Right, Minnesota could spin it like, look, we're going to buy you out if you don't do this.
Right.
Well, and maybe that's the case, and then he can sign anywhere. But maybe he wants to continue his career, and he sees the opportunity of playing with Crosby as a possibility of having a big year, and then signing another big deal. There's always that possibility. I just think that Pittsburgh. If the trade is going to happen, it's going to happen probably in the next year or two, because at that point, then Malkin is not worth the 9.5. You have to trade him while he's worth that hefty salary, because 4 years. You're taking on 4 or 5 more years of $9.5 million, and that's an onerous hit, especially with the cap staying static this year.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. So that's just one name. The Kings are another team. That I would look to. Apparently, I think I've heard that's Malkin's top choice.
And if the Kings are involved, I would be shocked if Dustin Brown isn't involved in the deal. He would
or Jeff Carter.
I can't see them trading Jeff Carter.
Everything I've heard of, they do not want Jeff Carter.
For Malkin, they would have to trade. There would have to be some.
I don't know if Jeff Carter's going to be there, regardless if Malkin is. I've been told that there are some serious issues in that locker room with Jeff Carter.
Well, there's always serious issues with Jeff Carter, but it still doesn't mean he's getting traded.
Right.
They don't want him there. Let's put it that way.
They do face the scenario with Tyler Toffoli, who's got, I think, another year left on the bridge deal, and he can play the middle, and he probably could fit in and fill Carter's role. If they just don't want Carter's influence around the team anymore, we've seen that situation before. That maybe that's the case.
I seem to remember that happening somewhere before.
Yeah,
it does sound familiar. Yes. I've not heard that as much as you have, Dan, but I do know that I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. It's interesting. But I just haven't heard it. Not just because I haven't heard it. No one said me either way. But I wouldn't be surprised if that. Carter has definitely warts and all is what's his name used to say. That's Jeff Carter for sure. But yeah, so that's a team. LA is definitely a team. I know there's some teams that really like him too. That are doing I was doing a lot of research over the last few. Florida would love to get a hold of Malkin. There's a wondering there. Okay, could Florida has the kind of young players you could put in there. Florida has cap space.
Well, to that end,
not hard to get a Russian to go to play in South Beach. That's been historically true, but not always the best place to put a Russian either. That's also been historically true.
And if you look at the moves that Florida has made before today, the Gabranson deal, they cleared about $2.6 million in cap space on that deal. They took back an entry-level deal in McCann. Then they traded Mark Savard's contract to New Jersey. That cleared $4 million in cap space.
They're clearing.
That's $6.5 million there, and really, I know that they have to re-sign. I think it was Vincent Trocheck on a new deal, and they were going to extend Ekblad, but Ekblad's still on his entry level. It might create the possibility of them going out and getting a big guy, and Malkin is a big guy.
There, and Stamkos has been rumored to them as well, and that's
I don't think so.
It's not out of the question at all, because the idea here is it's still Florida for Stamkos. It's still the tax money is the same for him. He doesn't mind that area, and the Panthers are a team on the way up. So it's hard to it depends who you'd have to give up for him, obviously, and if you have to give up anything, you get his rights, and his rights are the next thing I'd like to discuss, because I've heard this too. And
I'll say this: I would be completely shocked if he goes to Florida. But go ahead, keep going.
I'd be shocked too, but I'm just saying that that is the kind of they will be involved in the Stamkos sweepstakes. They can
make it work. It definitely can work for them.
Yeah, they want to get a player like that. If it's Stamkos, if it's Malkin, they are a team who wants to do that. New Jersey would also go big on Malkin, I was told.
Yeah, well, that makes sense with Shiro. But can I just say, with that Florida idea, Eck, Buffalo, Florida, Montreal, Detroit, Buffalo. Gee, what do they all have in common? They're all in the same division. They're trying to make it more expensive for Tampa Bay to re-sign him, or for another team who's rumored to be leading the pack in terms of trying to sign him to have to pay him more. I think simply that's what it is.
Or is it because he's probably the best UFA in 15 years that hit the
All right,
market?
but here's the reality.
You got to do your due diligence and kick the tires.
Here's the reality, though.
Yeah.
Florida can't afford to pay him $10 million. They can't. They don't have the fan base to support it. And they might want to lay out the money and hope that the fans are going to come. But I think you're talking about a limited fan base there where you shouldn't be overspending like that. That's just
they have that set revenue now, though, with that new law that went through. They are getting revenue sharing from the state now.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are, and it's gonna. I mean, and if you want to draw fans, Stamkos is already.
Stamkos is not going to draw those kinds of fans in South Florida that are going to the beach, that are eating out every night. They don't care about Steven Stamkos. They may care about a winner, but they're not going to go because Steven Stamkos is there.
Part of the problem is they're not in Miami. They don't have a Miami fan base. They have a Fort Lauderdale fan base.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's not. It is, and that's a big deal. And I mean, they're going to be aggressive, and they're showing by what they've done already this off season that they're going for it. They're making changes. They're doing all sorts of things to show they're going to move forward. Would I call them a favorite for Stamkos? No, but I'm just saying I think they'll be in on it, and I don't think it's just about. I really don't think this is just about driving up the price for Toronto. I think that and I don't think it's that case with
or Tampa.
I don't think it's the case with Buffalo or Detroit. I mean, these are places and Montreal. You can say that's a fringe benefit of getting involved in it, but that's not why they're doing it. They're doing it to get Steven Stamkos. These are teams that really want him as much as anybody else does, and they want him. I mean, the fringe benefit of it is sure it drives up the price for the other teams. That's fine if it does, but these are all teams that need Steven Stamkos. Detroit needs Steven Stamkos. Montreal needs Steven Stamkos. They all need him.
I don't even think Montreal's a great place, and I don't think he'd go there because I don't think he wants to be second fiddle to Carey Price. I don't.
Right.
I don't know about the second fiddle, but I think the taxes in Montreal are really.
There's no way around it. Carey Price is the number one guy.
But you're not second fiddle to a goalie as a forward.
The only way that Montreal can do that deal is by trading one of his best friends in PK Subban. So I don't know how they make that work.
They can have PK. No, they can make that work.
Wait, let me ask you this, Zach. If Steven Stamkos goes to the Rangers, he's not second fiddle to Henrik Lundqvist? Come on.
No.
He is.
They're both star players. No, there's more pressure on Stamkos than Lundqvist if Stamkos goes there.
No, I disagree.
That's ridiculous.
I don't think
you could have two players on a team that have pressure on them.
Teams that have always had a goalie market, and it's always been the Rangers, and it's always been the Canadians.
That's because they can't get forwards to play good.
No, I will totally disagree with this, and this is why, because I've talked to a lot of players over the years that have gone to teams, and the first thing they want to go to is a team with a great goalie. That is the biggest requirement. They always say, I want a team that can win the Stanley Cup, and I want a team that has a really good goalie. Sure. I can tell you players who've signed with teams just because of that they will not go. So, I mean, I don't think they care about a great goalie being there. I think I think they'll play second fiddle to another center or another forward. Yeah, I could see that. But the goalie is just what they need. It's just a requirement. It's like you buy a house, you got to have a great house, and their goalie is your house. I mean, that's how they see it.
Talking about the trading the negotiating rights, like you said in your post this morning, I think you said that the deadline might be the 22nd.
I heard it was Wednesday the 22nd, which is 2 days before the draft.
2 days before the draft, and the thing is that right after that draft weekend, you go into the 5-day negotiating window, and that's where it makes sense because. For teams that are interested in him, they can legitimately talk to Newport Sports and get an idea of what they're looking for. And I'll use Toronto as the example. I know if Toronto goes to him and Newport Sports says to him, we want $10.5 to $11 million a year, and the Leafs can live with that, then I don't think the Leafs have a problem trading players on their existing roster that might help Tampa Bay, stem the tide or even contend. The following year to get the rights to Stamkos. If they know that they can get him, I don't think it's a problem.
Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that. I think that you'll see them try to negotiate till Wednesday and then try to trade his rights. I do. I think that's what you'll see. And if they can't get it done. I also think, but remember, trading his rights doesn't mean it's a really dangerous thing to trade for a player's rights. It's a dangerous thing to give, you have no control over what happens next, because if they trade Kadri to them and he just ends up signing back in Tampa, and Tampa gets Stamkos and Kadri.
Well, a team is not going to trade for his rights unless they have a chance to talk to him and they basically have a deal in principle. You'd be stupid.
But it happens all the time.
Well, could it be a way? Could it be a way for a team to trade for his rights to get rid of a player they don't want?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. That is definitely the case. That could happen. I mean,
hey, Tampa, here's Josh Bailey. Let's get Stamkos' right.
Yeah, no, and the Islanders could do that even if they just want to get his rights, because their rights can still be traded to another team. So if Kadri's available, what the hell, I would get the Islanders. I would get a hold of Stamkos' rights. You can get him for Bailey, and then you get Kadri, and you end up getting Kadri for Bailey. That's a good trade. Take it.
But the whole point of trading for his negotiating rights before July the 1st. It is after that 5-day window opens up where you get a chance to talk to the agent. I mean, you're not going to pull the trigger on trading the rights and costing yourself players unless you have confidence that you can get his name on the dotted line. Otherwise,
I've seen a team flip the rights again when they realized I signed.
Sure.
And the way rights are traded now, this is how I expect it to happen. I expect that I would see Toronto trading conditional draft picks for his rights. That's really the cheap and lousy way of doing it. But we've seen it lately. A conditional first-round draft pick if we sign him, as a third-round draft pick if we don't, or something like that. And that's the cheap way out of it, and that's the way you're not risking it much.
With all the second-round picks that Toronto has, I could see them going a conditional second.
Yeah, conditional. I was going to say, I don't see...
Yeah, I don't mean it doesn't have to be first, but that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Second and fifth or whatever. It can be third and seventh or just anything, but that's the way it'll be, something along those lines. I don't
Could even be 2-2s. The Leafs have 600 second-round picks in the next 3 years.
Seven in the next 3 years, yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
So I really would be disappointed in the Leafs if they traded Kadri for his rights. That to me is...
I mean...
That's insane. Kadri signed at a really good number. He's got a lot of potential. With all the players coming in, he could be a really good top six.
Kadri was signed at a really good number for asset management. I will bet.
But also because he wants to stay in Toronto. I mean, that's part of why he signed that contract.
I will bet you. I'll bet you a case of cookies, Zach.
All right. That they would trade Kadri's rights for Steven Stamkos.
No. That's not the bet. The bet is that Kadri signed a 6-year deal. I will bet that Kadri is traded before the first half of that deal expires.
All right. That's hard to say now because you have no idea what's happening next. I mean, that's that to me. What happens next now is, who knows? He may have the incredible chemistry with Marner that no one knows about, or he may have. I mean, there's in the next 3 years, anything can happen. I mean, I think he's the talented kid, and I think they put him in the right spot.
Yeah.
You know what? I think Kadri is a really good placeholder right now. If he progresses, his contract is great and you hold on to him. If he doesn't, his contract's great and you can move him. I think when you're rebuilding right now, you let him play and you see which way it goes. If he's not what you think he is, you can easily move him. If he is what you think he is, you got a bargain.
Yeah, Dan, he's a stop. Right now, Nazem Kadri is a stopgap. That's all.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
There isn't. He had a good year last year. And he worked well with Babcock, and they signed him to a very cost-effective deal. He's a stopgap. If they sign Stamkos and you have Stamkos and Austin Matthews, Nazem Kadri is a $4.5 million third-line center. You can do without that. You can in a couple years they'll need that money for something else, and he'll be moved.
Right.
All right, so let's move on because I'm going to talk about Marc-Andre Fleury too, but I'm going to move him to tomorrow. But just check out my blog for the latest on that. A little teaser there, and then we'll discuss it more tomorrow. But in the meantime, we're going to do something a little different that we're going to do from now until the draft, and because we do have one of the preeminent draft people in the world, and Russ Cohen on our panel, and then Mike knows a little bit about the draft too. So since we've got those guys here, I thought we would start with doing a prospect a day, and what teams are looking forward to. So, Russ, what do we have today? What's on the prospect?
So let's talk about Clayton Keller, because Clayton Keller is an interesting guy because for the people that put together draft reports but have never really seen him, it's easy to sort of slot him in like the 12th or 13th spot because he's 5'10", 168 pounds, but that really doesn't tell the story. And I've seen him as low as like 13 or as high, depending on how you think about things. Yeah. And he's really not going to go there. I have him at 8th, and I think he'll go even higher than that, possibly, if a team really falls in love with him. The thing about him is he has a lot of Patrick Kane in him, in that the opposing defense is always chasing him. They can't ever seem to pin him down. They don't know where he's going next with the puck. He either sets up a scoring chance or he scores himself. He may only be 168 pounds, but he's really strong for the 168 pounds. He wins a lot of faceoffs against. I've seen him against older players, bigger players. He is a true centerman. He's not a guy that's going to get moved to the wing. He has the NTDP scoring record, which means he had more points than Patrick Kane or Phil Kessel or Austin Matthews in a single season. So, he's got some things going for him. And he's a BU commit. We'll see if that holds up. It should. But you never know. Sometimes if he goes, to a certain team that has a chat with him, you never know if he'll go somewhere else. I think he'll go to BU. But at the end of the day, this kid scores from a lot of different places. In the heart of it, he's a playmaking center, but he could also score, and his skating is just tremendous.
Is there a player, and I'm going to ask you this every day, so just be prepared, because this is what this as a prospect person. Now, first of all, one thing I think we should change just immediately right off the bat, instead of higher or lower, why don't you guys in prospects and for the draft just say sooner or later? Like he could go sooner than that or later than that.
That's good.
I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just that's right. He could go sooner than that or he could go later than that.
I like that.
Anyway, so because I've always had higher or lower things always whack me out too with the draft. But all right, so every day I'm gonna know this. Give us a player that is.
I don't do that though. That's the one thing I don't.
I hate doing that. Oh, draft. All right. That's what people want to know. Like we all know players.
But the thing is, I'll tell you why. This is my philosophy.
Go ahead.
And then I'll let Mike go. My basic philosophy is he's the only Clayton Keller. He may remind you of Patrick Kane at times. He might remind you of some other guy at times. But he is the only Clayton Keller. And so I don't try and say he's somebody else. I'm not trying to cop out. I've been doing it that way for a long time.
I understand.
No, it's inherently unfair because then you have a thing in your mind. You think, okay, he's going to be Phil Kessel, and then he's not Phil Kessel. He doesn't eat hot dogs. So I mean, I think Keller. I mean, right now, from everything that I've read and studied and talked to Russ and other people about, is that the two guys who look to be climbers in this draft are Keller and Logan Brown. That those two guys will be in the top 10 when most people have them ranked outside the top 10. So, and those are both guys, both American guys, and the thing is that they're sort of diametrically opposed because Logan Brown is 6'6" and getting bigger, and he's that prototypical big center that a lot of teams are looking for. And Clayton Keller is a smaller guy, but size doesn't seem to matter with him. I sort of compare, and just talking about the size aspect, I sort of compare it to what the Leafs went through last year with Marner. Marner's mark against him is his size. It's still a concern right now, even though he's won every MVP in the CHL, the OHL, and the Memorial Cup. But that question mark that's still out there is his size. And I think with Keller, the question mark is his size, but there's no questioning his ability.
What jumps off the table for me is his hockey IQ, his speed. He's one of the best skaters, or pure skaters in this draft. But his hockey IQ is off the charts. He never seems to get hit or put himself in a position to get creamed. He's just a really smart player. And I don't like doing the projections either. I'll just tell you, he kind of reminds me a little of Tyler Johnson. I think he has a little Tyler Johnson. I think he might actually have better hands than Tyler Johnson. But I think I see a little bit of that in him.
And he's bigger. He's bigger than Tyler.
Yeah.
How would you compare him to Mitch Marner?
I would say he's a better face-off guy than Marner will be. I would also say that he's a little more elusive than Marner, but it's not much. I mean, they're both pretty close. The the thing that I said about him, he's the all-time points leader for the NTDP, not single season. But the other thing about him is when I've seen him up against top talent, I don't see a way of shutting him down. I haven't seen anybody shut him down. And not that Marner has ever been shut down in juniors, but I think there'll be a point where he has to battle through that. Yeah. I have not seen this happen for Keller yet.
And most
Hockey East will be good for Keller because he'll be playing against some big boys, and it's got to be a really good barometer for him.
And I'm pretty sure when we were talking with him at the comp, he said that his CHL rights were owned by Windsor. Yes. And his friend is Logan Brown, so there's a possibility that if he doesn't go to BU, he goes to Windsor. So, and that team will probably compete against London. And
I'd say he's 99% committed to BU.
But the
I'd be very surprised if he didn't go to BU.
Right, but the thing is that Marner projects as a winger in the NHL. I mean, he may, if he does go back to the OHL next year, he may play center because the center on that line, Dvorak, is going to probably be with the Arizona Coyotes. But so it's not a complete comparison because I don't think, even though Marner can play center, that he will end up being a center. Whereas I think Keller will be a center in the NHL.
What is the soonest he could go, Russ?
I mean, I've heard some crazy things. I've heard he could go 3 or 4 if the team really wanted to trade for him and go up there and get him. So I would say that's the soonest. But I think the most realistic is once you're at around 6, it's possible that he could go.
So 6 to 10. Who in that range? What team in that range?
Calgary is 6. Vancouver's
Arizona.
5. Vancouver's going to take a defenseman probably at 5. 6 is Calgary.
Right.
7 is Arizona.
Right.
8 is Buffalo. See, the thing is, Buffalo doesn't need a center because they have O'Reilly and they have Eichel. So they
but he can go to college for 2 years and you can reevaluate it at that time.
Sure. I mean, you're not going to turn it down. And then some people think Reinhart can be a center in the NHL still. I mean, he played the wing.
I'm not sure. I don't think Reinhart's going to be a center.
But,
I like him better in the top 6 on the wing.
What about Montreal? What about Montreal at 9? There's a team center up the middle.
That would be. You can already hear what that would be, right? I mean, Montreal's getting another small, speedy player. They would always be like, "Oh man,
Brown. Yeah, because Galchenyuk was horrible with 25 goals this year.
Oh, I know, but I agree.
Well, they won't keep it center.
Mean, if I'm Montreal, I just go for it. You're a fast, speedy team. Deal with it. It's okay.
I have a feeling that the fans in La Belle Province will not be happy with any name other than a guy named Dubois.
Look, I mean, that's probably true. If I could put Keller and Johnny Gaudreau together, I have to seriously consider that.
Wow. Yeah, that would be something. I mean, imagine him in Arizona too. I mean, Arizona's got all this great talent coming.
Not bad up the middle. Monahan, Bennett, and Clayton Keller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that would be pretty darn good. Let's talk a little bit about the Oilers too before we get out of here. Russ, number 4, and this is obviously the most interesting pick in the top 10 for a lot of people because, will they possibly go and get a defenseman?
So I was reading an article today by Mark Spector, which was kind of interesting because he never once talked about drafting a defenseman. He talked about everything else, possibly trading for one, possibly trading down for one. Possibly, and here's my thinking on this. If you look at a guy like, let's say you're looking at Jacob Chychrun, Olio Levy, and Sergachev, right? Mikhail Sergachev.
Right.
If you believe any one of them or one of the 3 are a top 2 defenseman, and that is a need in your organization, and you can't make a trade, then you have to draft one of them. That's what you need to do because
that's not that big of a stretch, Russ.
Not. But it does seem to be for the media out there because it's just one of these things. Well, you can't just take a defenseman there, and I'm thinking, why can't you?
You can take the 7th ranked player at 4. I don't think that's a big deal.
Right.
Yeah, but this is, I mean, remember, this is an organization whose owner told the general manager, take the forward over the defenseman, and I will say right now that Ryan Murray in Edmonton would be a hell of a lot better than Nail Yakupov, who they're probably going to trade this summer. This organization has been asinine in its approach towards drafting defensemen. Darnell Nurse is a pretty good defenseman. They got Clefbaum in the first round a few years ago, but these guys, I understand
Griffin Reinhart.
Griffin Reinhart, I understand the want of that organization to improve immediately. I think that fan base is getting frustrated, and that's why the penchant might be to make the trade and get a guy like a Shattenkirk or a Jonas Brodin or somebody out there who's experienced that can step right in. But your crying need right now is your blue line because your blue line is terrible. And if you if you pass up, and I think Matthew Tkachuk is going to be a great player. I think Dubois is going to be a great player. But honestly, if you're at number 4, what do you need another forward for? You've got to take the best defenseman on the board.
And here's the reality. The reality is Sergachev may be the fastest to the NHL. It might be there next year. If that's really what you want to do, and that's not my pick, do it. If you want the guy that you think will be the most unflappable and easiest to put in, then take your Levy because he'll be the most boring, great defenseman you'll ever have. Right. If you want somebody that everybody will oogle over, then take Chychrun because he's a physical specimen and you really don't know what his ceiling is. And so I don't think you could really go wrong. But the idea is, yeah, they'll be under speculation for a couple of years when some of those other guys get off to a quicker start and look a little sexier. But at the end of the day, they've got to become a better team. And how are you trading for a 1 or a 2? You're not. Nobody's giving those guys up. Even a Shattenkirk, even if you're going to try and get Shattenkirk, the price is going to be so prohibitive that they're going to end up moving 2 of the forwards they didn't want to move and draft picks. And then, yes, then they could draft a forward. But, I mean, do you really want to do it that way? I wouldn't.
The price will be
you should be able to move one of those forwards for at least a 3, a good 3.
Yeah, you can get a 3, but that's the problem is they're going to have a lot of 3s.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard, we've heard Yakupov mentioned to the Flyers for Sanheim plus. I've heard that a lot lately. That gives them.
I don't think it's fair value. I don't think the Flyers would take that deal as face value.
I don't either. No, I don't either.
They wouldn't.
I think they would. I do. I mean,
Sanheim's really intriguing.
Yeah,
he's intriguing, but at the same time, the Flyers are doing nothing but talking about how they're going to improve their offense. There aren't that many ways to do it.
And the Flyers have an embarrassment of riches in terms of defensive prospects.
They do.
When you have that many defensive prospects, it almost devalues them a little bit because you got all these guys. Give me one of them, and then you get an offensive player for them. I mean, they're not going to trade Provorov. They're not going to trade Moran probably.
They're not going to trade Gostisbehere. So
they're not going to trade Gostisbehere. So Sanheim is the unlucky guy here. But to me, I think I would go with Eberle more than I go with Yakupov.
I don't think Eberle's going to be available though. I think it's.
The thing, but that the Flyers wouldn't make that deal then. Like that's the point.
No, but there are people in the Flyers. The Flyers have scouted Yakupov. I've been talking to people about this, and they've scouted him, and they believe he actually has potential to be a really solid two-way player. They think he's just been played really poorly.
He's not playing good defense. I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is in this market you're trading a number 1 defenseman, a 1 or a 2, for a guy who is a second-line player at best. Might be a third-line player.
At this age, you don't know that. He's a first overall pick still. I mean, he's still.
You forget that. He's wiped out as a first overall pick. That means nothing anymore. It's just what you see on the ice. That's really all that it means.
Yeah, but what you've seen on the ice is with Edmonton. I mean, that's the way they're looking at it. I'm just telling you. I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit here because I don't disagree with you guys, but I'm telling you what I'm hearing, and this the way they're looking at it. They're like, okay, this guy has potential, and.
Alexander Daig was a first overall pick. Aki Berg was a third overall pick. Once you found out,
Daig's had a better career so far than Yakupov.
Yeah, well, once you found out that both those guys stunk, where they were picked is meaningless.
Yeah, but it's so tough with Yakupov to tell what he's really about because of what.
He's not going to be a top liner on the Flyers. If he gets traded there, he will not be a top liner.
Yeah, you don't think he'd be a top 6?
No, he'll be a top 6, but not a top liner. So now you're trading a second line guy for a 1 or a 2, which now you basically know what the market is for a 1 or a 2. Like there's no way they're making that deal face value. I don't think.
And you're talking about a 1 or a 2 who will be on an entry level deal for 3 years.
Right.
Yeah, but you don't know what Sanheim is yet, though.
You don't. And
I'm telling you,
you're trading on potential there.
Sure.
Now he's probably close to being ready, and you can come in and that for Edmonton that's a really solid thing. I mean, there aren't many teams, when you think about, they're not going to get better than that for Yakupov, right? So, and there are because you have to have somebody who believes in Yakupov first of all, and I think there are people within the Flyers organization who do. So they know that.
There's a lot of teams that believe in them.
There aren't that many. It's funny. I mean, I'm surprised by that. I have to tell you. I mean, there's reasons that in the past, Darren Dreger and others have said there's nowhere for them to trade Yakupov. It is true that there are a lot of teams that are very much against him, but there are teams who have seen something in him that they like, and I think one of those teams is Philadelphia.
Well, I know that you've said Montreal in the past, and I still cling to that one because they need offense, and there is Galchenyuk there, and that pairing, I think.
Oh yeah, no, Montreal will be the other team in that bidding for sure, which also will require the Flyers, if they like him, to go higher because Montreal will go a little bit higher, so there will be a bidding war to a degree for Yakupov.
To me, it makes more sense, but the other thing is, look, the Flyers. They may trade for an offensive player. They may not. They may actually go out in free agency and get one. They might do that, and that might be all they go and try and do. That may be all Hextall's trying to say is to get better. I think people have maybe put too much stock into what he said. I wouldn't get crazy about that right now.
Yeah, I mean I do agree with that. We don't know with Extall because we're still relatively new GM. He's always been in one mode until now. Like this is the first time we're seeing maybe an aggressive Extall. We've always seen a very passive Extall, but which seems like an oxymoron, a passive Extall, right? But yeah, the idea here is I do buy it. The one thing I think about him is even though I don't necessarily always agree with what he does seem to be very blatant about what he's doing. He seems to be very this and him saying that he's going to improve the offense, I can't help but think he's going to try to improve the offense because he is the way he is. In the past, he's simply said we're not improving the offense or we're not going out and getting players. We're not doing this, and now he's saying he could. So
sure, but if they traded for let's say Artem Anisimov, that would improve their offense. Like I think it's just as simple as that. I don't think he's talking about making a huge deal to improve.
He's talking about a top 6. So is Anisimov a top 6?
Yeah, he'd be a top 6 on the Flyers. He would be.
Perhaps. Yep. I think it's tight. I mean, when you look at the 6.
He was playing with Patrick Kane last year. He's going to be a top 6. I mean, he got some time on that line. He's going to be top 6 on the Flyers. Yes.
Yeah. But he also, it's so hard with him because he was playing with Patrick Kane, right? So, Columbus Anisimov was okay, but not, anything like this.
So he's going to get you 20 goals. Like that's what he does. He gets 20 goals.
Right. No, and I agree. And his skill is the idea, though. For the Flyers, they're looking for skill. They're looking for skilled players who can play at a high skill level because they feel like they've got some players on their team that will play better with other skilled players. That's what I've been told. So they need to bring in skilled players.
One final thing. It was announced over the weekend that Scotty Hartnell had agreed to waive his no-move clause, which I thought he had already waived when he had agreed to the deal from Philadelphia to Columbus, but I'm just wondering what kind of value they're going to get for Hartnell, if anything.
I think they will. For Hart. I mean, it depends. His contract is tough, but I do think that if you're a team,
give him some money. Yeah, I think if you give back some money, you take some money of the Hartnell deal, you could get like a second-round pick and a prospect.
Right, you take $1 million off that deal. I think you get a second.
Your mic is gone.
It's so funny. But every time at this time, like if we go over an hour, our USB microphones, mine does the same thing. It's so funny. Over an hour, your USB microphone will will crap out on you. It's really funny. It's just something that I think it's just. I've heard other people tell me about this too.
How's that?
Still crappy.
Really? All right.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Just unplug it for a little bit longer. But yeah, all right. Well, that's good. It's all the time we have for today anyway, so we're just gonna get out of here as it is. But no, this is a good show, guys, and we will be back again tomorrow with more of this. We're gonna do more. Tomorrow we're gonna have 10 days until the draft, and when I tell you guys that this draft is going to be insane and the weekend leading into it is going to be insane, I am serious about that. Like this is not your grandfather's draft. Okay, this is we're talking about. I mean, the draft itself will be fun, and there'll be teams trying to move around draft picks for sure. That's already happening. They're already trying to.
If it was our grandfather's draft, they'd be passing out Geritol at the first Niagara Center.
Right, and they'd be drafting 12 rounds or whatever it was. So no, but I think that what we're going to see is our trades like nothing we've ever seen before. I mean, just when you put Yakupov and Malkin into the mix already, you're talking about some really interesting players with huge potential. Stamkos is possibly being traded. You're going to see, you're going to see Tyson Barrie traded. There's other players that are going to be traded as well. It's going to be fascinating and well worth watching. Marc-Andre Fleury probably is going to be traded. Stay tuned for more of that tomorrow.
And the epicenter of it all will be Buffalo.
And Buffalo, it'll be, and Mike and Russ will be there.
Yep.
Remember, guys, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you then.